Ever since I was a kid, I loved animals. Animals with fins, animals with wings, and even animals enclosed in cardboard boxes. The idea of building a zoo exhibit that makes both the animals and the visitors happy makes me happy. And so this video was born, and today we're going to be looking at my favorite zoo-themed board games that make me go wild. Hey Danny, are you ready to go to the zoo today? Don't forget to pack the bare essentials. Before we take a deep dive into this zoo theme list, I want to make an honorable mention for a game that I've actually ordered but I haven't quite played yet, so it couldn't technically be added to this list. It's a game where you have 6 aquariums and you're trying to put different marine species into the aquariums to try and get victory points. It is a game called Aqua Garden. What really drew me to Aqua Garden is the cool rondelle mechanism of, if you're the last worker in the queue, you kind of move around this track drafting different marine species as you go. And each time you pick an animal, you then move your little worker who's connected to your 6 aquarium tanks around in a little circuit, and whichever 2 tanks that worker is standing next to, that's where you place your species. Now what adds some cool puzzly complexity to the game is the idea that each species has its own requirements. Oxygen requirements, there's like a turtle that needs seaweed, sharks can't live in the same tank as its prey, and there's also certain combinations of fish that work better than others. And there's this really cool puzzle of trying to fit these animals into the right tanks to try and satisfy their happiness, as well as gaining the most victory points possible. There's a nice synergy of where you have to synchronize the 2 rondelles together to try and optimize the puzzle. And as an aquarist who loves fish, this definitely is a zoo-themed game that plays close to my heart. I knew there was something fishy about this video. When people say Jurassic-sized, they are often referring to my personal board game collection, because it's getting to that level. It also reminds me of one of my favorite dinosaur films, Jurassic Park. Draftosaurus takes a simple concept and makes it tactile and snappy. Players won't be building a zoo, but rather deciding which ferocious dinos will be placed in their zoo based on a range of different scoring conditions. It might be pooling the same species together, having pairs, having a diverse enclosure, or even one which has them going solo. Players will make their choices by literally passing a reptilian hand of dinos around the circle, picking the most tantalizing one to keep each time. Rolling the die narrows down where on your board you are allowed to place your dinosaurs each turn, except for the person who rolled it. They can place it anywhere. It's a game of species selection. The way the Draftosaurus evokes that sense that you're building a zoo is mainly through its dinosaur species selection. The idea that each and every round you're going to see a grouping of different dinosaurs and you're going to try and match them to your enclosures. It all comes down to which species of dinosaur you choose and where you place them on your board. And the timing is really going to make a very big difference. Early on in the game, you're going to have a lot of different options for what enclosures you put them in, but towards the end of the game, as everything fills up, you're going to have a lot less places to put those dinosaurs to score those valuable points. The Dino Die also adds some added level restrictions about which regions of your board you can actually dabble in, and that creates for some really interesting situations where you'll be left with some dinosaurs and you'll be left with 2 or 3 enclosures where you're like, this dinosaur doesn't fit perfectly there, but I need to make it work. And it's those really tricky decisions that the game kind of funnels you into that makes the game so crunchy and puzzly. Do you think animals are happy living in an urban jungle? Just take a look at these animals on the front cover of this game box. Doesn't it just simply scream, "Get me out of here"? Polyomino tiles are a twist on the tile placement genre and have been as numerous and as plentiful as the hyenas on an African safari. New York Zoo tends to fend for itself above the rest of its polyomino counterparts. It's a puzzly game where you're trying to fill up your board as quickly as possible. Each turn, players will be moving this wooden elephant marker around this fishbone-shaped track, stopping to either draft different shaped tile enclosures or to pick up different species of animals. When a player picks an enclosure, they'll need to fill it up with animals. Filling an enclosure completely earns you the power to take an amusement tile, which you can use to fill in those pesky gaps on your board. The game is like a mix of Tetris and a crossword puzzle. Additionally, whenever the elephant marker crosses these lines, your animals breed and populate. It's an efficiency puzzle. Fill up the space, get the guests in, and get the guests out. It's all part of the inner city zoo experience. City zoos have this reputation of trying to condense everything down into a feasible sized location. Something that really has a wow factor for people who live in urban, sprawling metropolises, but also satisfies the needs of those animals as well. New York City Zoo definitely emanates that theme so well. The idea of trying to cram these little animals, and there's a very eclectic mix of animals in this game, to try and fill up the zoo as quickly as possible, definitely comes through its theme. What I really like about New York City Zoo is the polyomino game creates for some really interesting tension. The main aim of the game is not to actually score victory points, but to actually fill up this entire board space first. And that kind of creates a really cool racing element to the game where it's like, how can I pick the pieces from this rondelle, which appears on this cool little fishbone board? How do I balance that with the sort of species of animals that I want to actually fill those enclosures with? Do you pick like a smaller enclosure and fill it up with animals first and make them breed really quickly to then be able to get bonus attraction tiles to fill in all those empty spaces? Or do you pick a really big enclosure tile which takes up a lot of space but then takes a long time to work towards? There is a really cool timing mechanism. There's a lot of cool thinkiness to the way the rondelle here works. Do you really focus in on breeding those animals and trying to replicate those animals to fill up that void? So Danny, how would you rate this game? Oh, it's excellent. Managing a zoo isn't just about keeping the animals happy. It's ensuring that they don't escape and eat your visitors as an afternoon snack. Dinosaur World focuses on the discovery of dinosaurs as well as the excitement of riding a jeep through the park to admire all the wildlife within it. I hope this ride is secure. Throughout the game, players will be hiring different specialist workers. They'll be recombining DNA to create different dinosaur species. They'll be constructing dinosaur paddocks and building a range of attractions. Dinosaurs that are placed in their respective paddocks provide placement bonuses, including victory points, more dinosaur DNA, and an increase to your threat level. Looking after dinosaurs is not like having a goldfish. Maybe it's more like keeping a piranha in a fish tank. After your park is set up, it's time to burn some rubber and take your guests on an edge-of-the-seat ride through your park. As you take a tour on the Jeeple, you'll be driving from tile to tile, generating excitement as you go. If you have specialists, they can be dropped off to matching tiles to trigger bonus actions. Essentially, you are creating an engine of bonuses that hopefully increases the reputation of your park. It's a zoo game of managing your business whilst toying with science. My favorite element of Dinosaur World is the fact that you can drive your Jeep and take all of your guests on this really cool dinosaur tour. And the fact that as you drive your Jeep through your park, you can drop particular workers off to activate bonus actions that match with their color, giving you a cool little engine that has a kind of a geographical chaining effect to it. If I want to kind of take my visitors to see all the carnivores in my park, I can. If I want to activate particular attraction tiles, I can. Using that Jeep and driving it from the entrance through the park is just so immensely satisfying. I love how there's a lot of thematic touches to the game, even though the game is very Yuri in nature. The idea that if you visit a dinosaur enclosure, there's going to be threats. It is going to increase your excitement, but you've got to increase your security to make sure that your guests are all protected. There are some negative effects that can occur in your park, which really simulates a lot of those cool SimCity style games, where it's not just all about building your park, but it's also trying to protect your park and your reputation as well. Creating an open wildlife preserve where the animals roam free and live in their natural habitats is the dream. It would be like creating a sanctuary for animals that don't realize that they're in a zoo. Habitats is a tile laying game that has you drafting tiles by moving your Jeep around this grid. Depending on how your vehicle is orientated, you'll be able to select tiles that are to your left, right, or in front of you. It's an interesting tile selection mechanism as you bump into other Jeeps and try to get tiles scattered around the grid. It definitely puts the drive in four-wheel drive. Tiles you obtain will be used to expand your safari park. Most animal tiles will have certain habitat requirements, and once fulfilled will earn you points at the end of the game. The interesting way these habitats work is that zones that have the same terrain that connect to your animal help to satisfy it.
so building one large lake using the water tiles could help house 3 different animals. Flowers and insects score by connecting them together, whilst watchtowers help to add value to those unused habitat tiles. Every tile in this game has a purpose. Its function is to contribute to the most important habitat of all, your game board.
When you're playing a game of habitats, you definitely feel like you're building an open plain style zoo. The idea that as you expand your habitats and you connect all of the regions together, those actually contribute to the requirements that certain species of animals have. And I love the chaining effect. The idea that you've got this big wetland region, the number of those tiles in that region can help support and contribute to the survival of a species that's connected to it. The requirements that each species needs can all be kind of chained together in this grid-like fashion. I absolutely love the drafting tile mechanism of driving your Jeep through this grid, trying to avoid the other players whilst also trying to make sure you don't get stuck in those corners, because the edges of your drafting area are going to provide you with less tile choices, whereas if you're in the middle of the drafting area, you're going to get more choices. And you know, if there's a savanna tile that you need that's on the other side of the grid, you've got to kind of plan a couple of steps ahead in terms of trying to work out how you're going to get that tile and then be able to add it to your tableau, whilst your opponent there might also be going for the same thing. But ultimately, I love the multi-use nature of each of the tiles. Not only can the tiles score, but also it helps other tiles to score, it helps to contribute to the terrain, and you've got those cool watchtowers that help those tiles that kind of get locked away and kind of a little bit useless to give them some sort of purpose as well.
Want to be adventurous and build the most elaborate and complicated zoo ever? Well, Zoo Tycoon will definitely give that title of most complex zoo game of all time a run for its money. Where Zoo Tycoon excels is in its thematic touches to nature, conservation, and animal welfare. The game strikes a balance between managing the animals' needs and the enjoyment factor of guests in your park. Throughout this experience, you'll take the reins on getting animals into your zoo, satisfying their happiness by moving cubes up these QR code-like animal cards that represent your animal's needs. These desires include their preferred enclosure size, gender composition, population number, and ideal retreat. It's a smorgasbord of conditions that you'll constantly have to monitor and adjust to. What's really interesting about this game is that if the ideal conditions are right, your animals can breed by taking a chance and rolling these dice. The animal offspring can contribute to further reproduction and also give rise to a very busy enclosure. Building shops and hiring staff can help manage your economy in the game. However, you'll ultimately be trying to strike a balance between conservation, education, and zoo popularity. The different levels of animals provide different challenges to overcome, as well as the race to see which zoo has the best conservation strategy. Zoo Tycoon is a board game that is sandboxy, and for those who dare take the leap, it could be a lot of fun.
Zoo Tycoon is probably one of the most thematically rich and highly complex Euros I've ever played in the zoo theme genre. The idea of building these enclosures, housing them with certain species of animals, and then trying to micromanage those animals' requirements is a very involved experience. What I really like about the game is how true to the theme it is. The idea that certain animals prefer to be with certain genders, certain group sizes, require certain space sizes, and certain housing requirements. And the interplay of those requirements on each and every animal card makes for a cool micro puzzle that you kind of have to keep track of throughout the game. The idea that you've got all these different terrain types, and then this particular animal prefers this terrain, but then you also want to make sure that that animal is the only male in the group of animals that you've got, makes for such a cool thematic experience. The fact that you can actually breed the animals, if you've got a male and a female, and at the beginning of the round, you can actually roll these breeding dice to see if you're going to get a boy or a girl, and that adds some extra complexity to your enclosure as well, because certain enclosures prefer to have only one dominant male in them, or some enclosures prefer a mixture. I do preface it by saying that the game is very, very deep and complex, yet once you kind of got a handle on the rules and all the little tiny exceptions, the game really feels very satisfying. So before we hit my number one favorite zoo themed board game to play, if you really like what you've seen so far, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. And if you want to check out any other videos on my channel, head over to my main page or support me on Patreon. I'd truly appreciate it.
Ark Nova is a beast of a Eurogame where players build a scientifically driven zoo. It feels like a paludarium in a box. You open it, tend to its cards, dabble in your map, and care for it as you look through the glass as everything expands and grows within. It is a green paradise. In Ark Nova, you'll essentially have 5 main actions that allow you to build enclosures, gain new cards, play animal cards, play sponsorship cards, and also send workers to the association board. Each action card moves along a track. The further the action card is up the track, the more powerful the action will be. These cards can also be flipped over and upgraded. To satisfy your animals, you will need to look at your animal cards and satisfy their habitat enclosure size and terrain conditions, as well as any tags that appear on it. Most of the cards in the deck will be very specific, and how you navigate that specificity is part of the charm of the game. Building enclosures requires you to connect them together as they spread across this petri dish of a zoo-like map, like some sort of E. coli bacteria. Cover up a bonus and gain it. Flip the enclosures over when you want to house an animal in it. There is an immense depth of synergy to connecting your map progress to the cards that you play. Sponsorship cards help give you extra bonuses, actions, and endgame scoring. Conservation plays a big part in the game, as you'll need to help different causes in order to move your conservation marker around the green track. Ark Nova is a beautiful race of preservation, conservation, and determination.
Ark Nova really hits it out of the park when it comes to nailing the zoo theme. It has you dabbling in all 3 levels of managing a zoo: the enclosure level, the conservation level, and the international connection level. The idea of marrying these Euro components together into this one corporate system of a game is something that has absolutely impressed me. Whilst it does have some cool flaws about, the randomness of card draws and the gameplay itself sometimes being quite situational, the game is a great challenge to just dive into, and it almost is like real life. There are lots of things that you can control, some things that are unpredictable, but then it's how you navigate your way through the game. In some games, you're going to be given a hand of cards where it's like, what do I do with these? And other games, you're like, wow, these cards actually work perfectly together. I absolutely love the variety of maps that this game provides to you, and the puzzle of laying those animal enclosures down, covering those bonuses, and the 5 powerful actions that kind of move along this track and increase in their strength, and the idea that you can even flip them over to upgrade them to like level 2 powers, and you can't upgrade all 5. So it allows you to lean into particular strategies and actions that you want to use to build your engine and get all those animal cards out really quickly. There's something about the rising tension in this game, that at the beginning of the game you've got this open map where you can kind of build wherever you want, but then as you get towards the end, trying to find the right animal enclosure pieces to cover up all the regions of your map becomes a very tight puzzle. So, what are some of your favorite zoo-themed board games? Were some of those ones that appeared on this list? Let me know in the comments section below. I'd love to start a conversation with you and get to know you. Now, thank you once again for joining me for another video. If you are a patron, don't forget to wait to the end of the video to see your name in the credits roll. Otherwise, this is Danny signing out. Hope your next zoo adventure is going to be an amazing one. See ya!